Tech Entrepreneurship. I hope you guys had a fantastic extended weekend, but we need to jump right into it. We're going to have class tomorrow at 10 a.m. Same channel, connect.asu.edu/Senor Chavez. So for those of you who want to participate online, we'll have class Friday morning at 10 a.m. Same channel, connect.asu.edu/Chavez. Okay, so getting right back into where we left off. I want to talk to you a little bit about the importance of the feeling and the story that your customers need to feel. I want to talk to you a little bit today about how you get them to feel that way also. And so what I've done is I've created my own little acronym, DICE. As entrepreneurs, especially startups, your products most likely have a lot of depth, meaning that there's more bells and whistles, there are more competitive advantages, there are more discriminators, if you will, that would appeal to consumers and appeal to your consumers. So what we're talking really is about depth. So your products need to be deep. And to be deep, we're talking about appealing to simplicity and complexity. Your customers aren't going to be the customers that are buying the product right off the shelf, that are looking for the lowest cost, highest quality unit out there. Your customers are going to be customers that are looking for the highest quality and are willing to pay more for your product, more for your service. You need to be able to appeal to that sense of simplicity and complexity. Indulgent. Indulgent. This is one of the, I think I'm going to put an asterisk by this one. I love the indulgent part of a company in the sense that they make me feel guilty about buying their product, yet at the same time delighted. How many times have you purchased something that was really expensive and you were getting what you knew what you were getting, and it was a top of the line car, watch, dress, shirt, whatever it may be, computer, and you knew that it was stretching your limits, but you felt delighted about the purchase. You also felt guilty. We want our customers in the blue ocean to feel guilty and delighted. Heck, it doesn't even have to be anything that terribly expensive. How about purchasing some ice cream? I do this all the time. I buy dessert at restaurants knowing that I shouldn't be, I should be watching my curves, my weight, whatever. And I buy it anyways. And I feel yet delighted and guilty at the same time. That's how we want blue ocean customers to feel. And we want them to feel complete. We want them to feel complete. Now, complete isn't just a transaction. We don't want them to walk out of the store. We don't want them to walk out with your product feeling like, okay, I hope this works. We want them to know, this is especially true in technology, we want our customers to know that there is support beyond what you received in the store, or there's support beyond what you received online in terms of purchasing something from eBay. Sometimes you buy something, especially when you buy it off of eBay or Amazon, and it's like, wow, I really hope this works. I know I can send it back, but wouldn't it be great to have that comfort and that confidence behind the purchase? So complete is a little more complex. And basically, we're talking about adding support to the sale. Adding support to the sale. Elegance. Elegance is a very important part of appealing to blue ocean customers. Again, you're not competing in the red ocean. You might have a computer that you just have made or an operating system that you've just created, and you think that you're competing with Apple or Linux or, I don't know, give me another one, Robert, or whoever it may be. You may think that you're whatever operating system, but the reality of it is you're not. You've got to price your product premium, and you've got to make sure that there is some sort of elegance to your product, to your service. So there needs to be some kind of beauty, clever, and ease of use that is not present in other products, in other services. And this is all about differentiation. And differentiation is what keeps you in the blue ocean. It's what keeps you from accidentally swimming in the red ocean. It keeps you from trying to compete inadvertently with legacy competitors, with competitors that have money and they have people. They have the resources to put you out of business. And with tech, it's about satisfying needs. It's about satisfying needs. I'm not sure how many of you purchase products because of a low customer burden. But there's a lot to be said about ease of use. There's a lot to be said about the customer or consumer not having a lot of issues or a lot of problems or trying to figure things out. It should be plug and play. And this is all about the need. And it should be fun. And like a lot of products, there should be an image that your target market associates themselves with. Your target market are primarily going to be first movers. They're going to be individuals who are willing to pay more for your product because it's not readily available to everyone else, or your product has so much more in terms of technical benefits, competitive advantages, differentiators, that it warrants them purchasing your service, your product. There should be some aspect of fun to it. How many of you have uploaded a software and been wowed by it? That's fun. And then you associate yourself with that image. You know, a lot of the reason why iPhones sell and sell well is because of the image. The image that reflects who they are. Not necessarily practical, not necessarily the best, but there is a certain image, right? Your product or service needs to resonate in that same manner. It's about needs. It's about needs. They need an image. They need to know that there's a low customer burden, and they also need to know that it's somewhat fun. Somewhat fun. This is basic 101 when it comes to trying to develop a story. Trying to develop a story for your product or your service. We talked about at the very beginning of this class, this being about differentiators. Differentiation. Differentiation is what makes your product, your service superior to others. Now I'm going to talk to you a little bit about marketing. And it's interesting because I had the same conversation with an international business class today. And I thought it would be relevant. Actually, I know it's relevant for this class. We're going to go over the story. And in order to develop the story, you're going to have to know the marketing equation. Here's the marketing equation. P equals S plus D plus E. For those of you who are online right now, tell me, this isn't a complex question. Tell me what we're solving for here. What is it that we're solving for? P equals S plus D plus E. What is it we're solving for? You only have 4 characters. What is it that we're solving for? We're solving for P. Right? Fairly simple question. We're solving for P. The marketing equation is how you develop the story. And this is where we're going to take a little bit of a deep dive. So pay attention. The story is positioning. Positioning is just a fancy word for the story. And this is what we were solving for, right? We're solving for P. So when I have P equals S plus D plus E, we're solving for the story. And what's interesting about the story is the story needs to be believable, and credible. The story needs to be believable and credible. Can't be over-exaggerated. It can't be lied about. People won't believe it, and you'll lose credibility. You'll lose that little bit of trust. But what's really, really mind-boggling here is the human psyche. In order for us to really want a blue ocean product, or even a red ocean product for that matter, the story needs to come in the form of a myth metaphor, or image. Myth, metaphor, or image. Story needs to come in the form of a myth, metaphor, or image. Needs to be believable and credible. So how do we do that? How do we create a story that's believable and credible and yet is somehow in the form of a myth or an image or a metaphor? Metaphors are great. They make comparisons without actually having to say the definition. Well, let's go through the meat of the story. How you come up with the story. S plus D plus E. We know that positioning is a story, and S is segmentation. So segmentation is all about identifying your blue ocean customer. Segmentation is about who your target market is. What's your target market called? Anyone online, what's your target market called? What is another word for target market? Anyone? Michael, David, Chris? Customer, you're very close. Ideal customer, very close, David. And you guys are right there. And I love that you put yourself out. It's your demographic. And your demographic is classified really as individuals, your age, income, gender, specific to your product or service. Are you selling t-shirts that resonate with 16 to 18-year-olds or 16 to 20-year-old males that live in California or in the West Coast on the ocean? I mean, what is it that you're trying to, who is it that you're trying to get to buy your product? That's your demographic. Now, if you know who your demographic is, you'll be able to create, or you'll be able to identify the critical mass. So once you have identified your demographic, let's say that I'm selling yarn. Let's say that I'm selling yarn. Primarily, the people that I'm selling yarn to are going to be older women that sew or that knit. I guess it's knit. Right? So I know who they are, maybe over 60. So I know exactly who they are. Maybe they live in, maybe I'm a local store and I'm in Minnesota. Well, I know who it is that I'm going to be targeting. I know my demographic. And now that I know who they are, I know that I'm not going to waste any time or any dollars on anybody outside of them. I'm going to hammer home my message to that demographic. But in order for me to do that, it's not enough for me to know who my demographic is. It's not enough for me to know who it is that's buying my product or that is potentially going to buy my product. I need to know how they think. And it's called the psychographics. We need to know how they think. The psychographics of the demographics. If you know how they think, you can create a message that resonates with them. That will elicit an emotional trigger to get them to purchase your product. to purchase your service, to download your app, to whatever it may be, but you need to know how they think. It's not enough to know who they are. Again, we're solving for P. We're solving for the story. We're solving for positioning. We need to be able to create a message that is both believable and credible, and yet at the same time in the form of myth, metaphor, image, that resonates with them. And the only way you do that is by creating a message that resonates with your demographic. Well, we need to have more information. We need to know what it is that separates us. That's called differentiation. D is differentiation. Differentiation is really how you separate yourself from other products or services, from other companies that make something similar to yourself. I mentioned at the very beginning of class that differentiation is what makes your product or service superior. What makes your product or service superior? Those are called competitive advantages. I know we've all heard this term because I hear it used every day. What makes your product superior? I don't particularly like the words competitive advantages. I don't really like that phrase. I prefer to use the word discriminators. What are the attributes that make your product or service superior? What discriminates your product from another? So, in lieu of competitive advantages, we're going to use discriminators. And there could be a multiplicity of discriminators, especially in tech. In tech, we often see speed as a big issue, memory, or flexibility, compatibility. These are big terms that I hear all the time from startup companies looking to raise capital. They're telling me all the time, Aaron, it's compatible with both this and this technology. It's compatible with these operating systems. It's compatible with XYZ. The speed, it's faster than this product. It's faster than this product. It's faster than that product. Those can be discriminators. But what about back office support? That was complete, right? That's what I talked about in the DICE acronym. That was complete. The support that the customer feels on the back end. That could be a discriminator. That could be a competitive advantage. How about service? Let me ask you this. When you go to a restaurant, you know what you're paying for. When you go to a Chipotle or whatever it's called, you're not really expecting people to clean your plate or pick up your plate or take your order. You go up in buffet style and you order your food. You pay for it, no tip. But then you go to, say, a really, really nice restaurant. Are you expecting just good food? Or are you expecting some support, some information on what wines you should be drinking paired with your meal. You should be getting a cloth between dishes that allows you to clean your hand. You might even get some sherbet to cleanse your palate from dish to dish. You're going to get plenty of support. You're going to have 2 and 3, 4 individuals working your table. Cleaning, serving, cleaning, delivering, etc. How many of you have gone to a nice restaurant and the service was the same as you would get at an Applebee's? That's terrible. That's terrible. It's not just about doing your job. It's about providing more. In the blue ocean, you provide more. Fine restaurants typically aren't chains. They're one-offs. They're one-offs. What are the discriminators that are going to separate you from other products, from other services? We need to know. And your story is going to have to resonate. So I had, several months ago, I had a student approach me, and he was creating some software. And he was really trying to build some trust with a potentially very large client. And he wanted to say that he was honest. Well, that's a given, right? I mean, it shouldn't be, it is maybe in this day and age, a competitive advantage. Not everybody is honest, right? But he wanted to say it, he understood that. He wanted to say it in a way that wasn't so blunt. I work an honest day. I'm an honest Joe. I will give you an honest quote, whatever it is. He wanted to say that without saying the word honest. So I gave him a metaphor. And the metaphor was this. And this is a true story about me. I remember one time when I was a young whippersnapper, and my grandfather took me to the park. And I must have been 4 or 5 years old. And I was there running around in the park, and he was watching me. And somebody had left a doll. Yeah, a doll in the park. And I'd been watching it. And I knew that someone had forgotten it. And in my mind, it was finders keepers. And I kept looking back to see if it was still there. And sure enough, after what seemed like an hour, it was probably 5 minutes, but what seemed like a very long time, and realizing that there weren't too many other kids in that area, I realized that doll was orphaned by another kid. I went and grabbed the doll, took it back to my grandfather, was really happy and excited. I had a new toy. And I thought he'd be excited too. So I went and showed him, and he wasn't very excited. In fact, he told me, Mijo, you need to go and you need to put that back where you found it. And I said, but, he said, you need to go and you need to put that right back where you found it. And I said, but it's nobody's. It's not, nobody, somebody lost it, they left it, whatever. I was coming up with every excuse that I could just to explain to him that it had no ownership. And he said to me, well, Mijo, is it yours? And I said, no. I wanted to say, yes, it's mine now, but I mean, the reality was it was not mine. And I said, no. And he said, well, if it's not yours, then you need to go put it back. So, I grumbled about it. I wasn't happy about it, and I went and put it back where I found it. That's a story, and that happens to be a true story, but it's a metaphor. It's a metaphor about honesty. I never once said the word honest, but I can tell you that I learned from that mistake, or that lesson, I should say. I don't know if it was a mistake, but I learned from that lesson from a very young age about honesty. There's where the story becomes a metaphor. And I tell my student, that's a story about honesty. I don't know if you have a story similar to, but if you really want to get across to your customer the honesty that you have, trying to sell them on it isn't going to work. You need to tell them a story. And hopefully it's a true story. Needs to be believable and credible, and there's your myth. There's your metaphor. There's your metaphor. I'll give you another story about how important the story is. So a Stanford professor years ago wanted to understand the importance of the story in advertising. So he was teaching an MBA class. There were about 20 students. And he told them that he was going to provide them with a fictitious product, a widget. And that somebody was going to come in and sell them this product. So he gave all 20 of them a copy of a description of the product. We'll call it a blender, toaster, microwave, washer. Description of the product, and then all the negative attributes. All the negative attributes of this product on one piece of paper. And there were several. Again, it's a fictitious product, so he made up. Not very efficient, makes a lot of noise, etc., etc. So the students had this piece of paper in front of them. They got to study it, read it. Okay, great. Professor brought in a salesman. Not a salesman that sells you a car and is, trying to work $200 out of you. Or nickel and diming you on options. No. A real salesman. Somebody that understands the psychographics of the demographics. Somebody that understands who she or he is working with. And thus can create the story tailored to them. Well, this gentleman walked in, told the story about the product, and then asked for orders. For those of you online, out of 20 students, tell me what you think. For those of you online, tell me what percentage or what number of students you think actually subscribe to or purchased that fictitious product from that salesman. How many bought the product? How many bought the service? Chris says 100%. Max says 10%. David says 70%. Michael says 70%. David says 0%. 100%. All 20 students purchased the product. They had negative, these were Stanford MBA students, negative information in front of them in writing, bold. And yet they all bought the product. Why? Why did they buy the product? Because the story elicited an emotional trigger that allowed for the salesman to complete his story, which is a sale. They all bought it. They all bought the product. That's how important the story is. How important is it for you as a startup to have a story that's better than Microsoft, or that's better than Apple or Samsung or Nokia or whatever it is? What Bosch, whoever it may be. You as a startup need to create a story that's believable, credible, in the form of a myth, metaphor, or image that is substantively better, resonates better. If you can do this, if it is better, you will win. You will win sales. Here's the problem. How many of you walk into a Best Buy, and let's just say, I'm not the most tech-savvy individual in the world, and I'm not the least. I've got a pretty good understanding of some things in tech. Well, at least I tell myself. How many of you walk into a Best Buy, and the salesman or woman, they're fairly young, and they ask you what you're looking for, you tell them, and the next thing you know, they're giving you all of the details of the product. I mean, isn't that what you've gone in there for? Haven't you gone in there shopping, say for a laptop or a printer, something, camera? You want to know details, right? And so there they are, they're telling you all the details about how much RAM and whatever is going on with this product. Isn't that what you go in there for? No. Unless you are a very, very high-tech individual, you probably won't even need to talk to them because you know what you want. But they're giving you all the features. And a lot of us, especially in tech, are very feature-oriented. And those are our discriminators. Those are our competitive advantages, are our features. But I'm here to tell you that features don't sell. Somebody tell me online what it is that you think that sells, especially in tech, other than features. What is it that sells if it's not features? Somebody online give me a hint, or give me the answer. What am I looking for? Personal recommendation? Okay, well, you're close, David, and I love that your appearance, Michael, very good, or Maxwell, Michael, Brand. Those are all great answers. David, trust. Excellent answers. But there's a better one. Not that these aren't correct, but there is a better one. Benefits. You sell the benefits. Instead of telling me how much memory I have, tell me what that means. What is the benefit to having more memory? Is that linear to speed? Will that save me time? Time is money. Therefore, I am saving money also? I mean, what are the benefits? When you sell features, take a look at this. Take a look at a car. What do I care whether or not it's a V12 or a V8 or a V6? What do I care? Unless, if you tell me, Aram, it's got a V12 horizontally opposed, turbocharged engine, etc., etc. Okay, well, yeah, great. What does that mean? Okay, it's fast. Well, how fast? Well, you're not going to be able to grab a dollar off of the dashboard when you accelerate. Whoa, wow, now I get it. You see what I'm saying? Now I get it. That's the benefit. The feature is that, okay, it's got a 12-cylinder horizontally opposed turbocharged, 48 valves, supercar. Super. Super. What does that mean? Especially startups, I see this mistake. We sell the features. And then we wonder why people don't get it. We sell the features in our story instead of selling the benefits. And I can tell you, without being in that Stanford class, I can tell you right now that that gentleman didn't sell the features because the features led to negative answers that they already had on their sheets. He was talking about the benefits. Don't tell me that it's got 12 cylinders. Don't tell me that it's got, a terabyte of whatever. Tell me what that means. I don't know. I might know what that means, but tell me the benefit of what else it could mean. Maybe I don't know what it means completely. Maybe I just have an idea. Like with the car. Well, if you tell me it's got 12 cylinders, turbocharged, horizontally opposed, Porsche 959, four-wheel drive, all-wheel drive, whatever. I mean, okay, I'm going to figure it's fast. But how fast? Think of that movie Pretty Woman. How many of you have seen the movie Pretty Woman? Has anybody online seen the movie Pretty Woman? Does anybody want to admit to it that you cried at the end? David? Michael? Max? Chris? Look at that. They all cried at the end, Robert. And Max cried hard. I love it. What was it that she described the Lotus Esprit as? Everybody remembers this line. He was talking about how he drove this car, and it was a Lotus. And he was trying to come up with how it handled. What did he say? What did she tell him? Does anybody remember? While you were crying, maybe you missed the line. It drove like it was on what? It drove like it was on rails. That's what she told him to tell. He blacked out those hours. You're never going to get those hours back, David. You're never going to get them back. But that was the line. That the car drove like it was on rails. Instead of talking about the suspension and all of the doodads on that thing and how great it was, it drove like it was on rails. That's all he needed to know to buy the car. That's it. That's it. And that was right, Chris. It drove like it was on rails. See, Chris says rails probably. Heck, he just watched the movie yesterday. All right. You sell, and I'm not knocking the movie. It was a good movie. All right. Of course, everybody's seen it, right? You sell the benefits, not the features. You sell the benefits. sell the benefits. E is the experience. P equals S plus D plus E. Now I have added, it used to be just P plus equals S plus D. I added E. Because this is real world, real time teaching. E is the experience. Why do you go to Starbucks? Tell me why you go to Starbucks. You go to Starbucks because the coffee is that incredibly great. Why do you go to Starbucks? You don't go to Starbucks because of the coffee. I'm going to tell you that right now. You don't pay $6.93 for a double espresso coffee latte upside down turtle cake. You don't. You go to Starbucks because you are getting a different experience. It used to be that very few Starbucks had drive-thrus. They want you to come into the store. They want you to come into the location. And they want you to come in with what kind of computer? What kind of computer do they want you to come in and sit down with and pop open? Tell me the brand. They want you to come in and flip open your Mac. Exactly. Because that's what you see. All the cool kids are using Macs, solving the world's problems and at the same time creating the next iconic video game. You go to Starbucks because of the experience that you get, not because of the coffee. You can't tell me, there are a lot of, I have buddies of mine that tell me that have very, very expensive taste that are telling me that other coffees at other places are tasting better or just as good. But do you think they want to walk into a McDonald's or a Dunkin' Donuts all the time? Or a whatever? No. No. How many die-hard coffee places have a drive-thru? Not many. Because they want you to come in and feel the ambiance. They want you to come in and relax. They want that air of sophistication. Can you give and resonate in your story some experience that they're going to receive that they wouldn't get your customer at another location or with another product or with another service? Can you tell them a story that has that experience tied in with the discriminators, the competitive advantages, looped over to how your demographics think, the psychographics, and then bundle all that up together and then throw it into the positioning, which is a story, and make it believable and credible. For those of you who think that marketing individuals are these, free thinkers that, could easily be thinking about, making snowmen as they are anything, whatever that means. I mean, they're just out there. There's no science to it. And you're right, a good marketer, a good marketeer is going to understand that that formula that I gave you, P equals S plus D plus E, is more of an art than it is a science. And in your professions, you should hope that in your startup, in your business, or if you work for another company, that your science becomes an art. You should be able to take your science and take it to the next level. That's when it becomes an art. That's where you become Da Vinci. That's where you become a Steve Jobs. You need to make sure that you can create the story. How many of you like telling stories? I don't think for me it's natural. But I have learned, I have grown to like it. It's not natural for me. It really isn't. I'm being completely dead on honest. It's not natural to me. I prefer to listen to them than I do tell them. But I practice, and I practice. Because I know that that's what resonates with customers. That's what resonates with your demographic. I'm going to tell you another story. There's a guy. His name is Graff. I believe it's Graaf. Graff. Graff was born and raised in the UK in London, and very, very humble by humble means. Started working in the jewelry district, just kind of running stuff back and forth, like an errand boy. Got into diamonds. Opened up a diamond store eventually. And there's a ton of work and effort. And he thought, boy, if I want to get big, I'm going to have to create a store. And I want to get big, but I just don't want to sell big diamonds. I want to sell the biggest. I want to sell the best diamonds money can buy. That was his war. That was where he wanted to play. That was his blue ocean. Not just a London Gold in the mall, not just a K Jewelers or a whatever in the mall. No. He wanted an exclusive clientele. So he came up with a story. And I'm not going to tell you that this story is a good story that resonates with me, but I'm going to tell you this was his story. A married couple walks into his jewelry store. They're looking at jewelry. She sees a ring that she wants. It's $1 million diamond. $1 million ring. The husband says, whoa, wait a minute. Now, I mean, I would love to buy it, but I'm only willing to pay $500,000. I can't go any higher than $500,000. She wants this ring so badly. They end up not getting it. They walk out. She comes back a week later. But she comes back with her lover. And they look at the same ring, and he's not really willing to go much higher than $500,000. They leave. She comes in right after and says, listen, you sell this to my husband for $500,000, you sell this to my significant other for $500,000. You got your money and I've got the ring. A week goes by, she comes in with her husband, they buy the ring for $500,000. She goes back, returns it, same thing. The point isn't that that was a great story. The point isn't that it was a super story. In fact, it's a really kind of cruddy story. But think about what it's saying. It's saying that if you want $1 million ring, $1 million diamond, now you know where to go. And that's the story that he told. Now Graff is vertically integrated, meaning that he owns the diamond mines all the way to the diamond stores and everything in between. That story got him on the map. Not because it was a great story, so don't think your story has to be a great one. It just has to resonate with your target market. So people in the mindset of buying $1 million ring, they might like the story. They might not. How many of you have seen an ad that you said, that was the crappiest ad I've ever seen? That was terrible. On TV or on the radio. Well, maybe that wasn't for you. You're not the target market. You just happen to hear it. You see that the story is what sells. Believable, credible, in the form of a myth, metaphor, image. It doesn't have to be a happy-go-lucky story. It doesn't have to be a great story in the sense that it's really, I mean, just fantastic. Makes the hairs on your neck stand up. No, it just has to resonate. It just has to resonate. Questions or comments thus far? Questions or comments thus far? In the blue ocean, you're going to have to be creative. More creative than the red ocean. And the red ocean has money. The red ocean has money to buy stories. They buy stories all day long. And David's got a fair question here. Any suggested resources for mapping psychographics? Well, you're going to need to know your product, and then you're going to need to know who it is that you're making that product for. You're going to have to do your own focus groups, and that's another class. In this course, I'm going to talk about focus groups. I may talk about, in fact, I will talk about them in next class, specifically for you. It wasn't going to be till later on in the semester, David, but I am going to talk about focus groups for the next class. It's a great point. And I'm going to take a deep dive into the surveys and types of surveys and how to give them. If you notice, and surveys aren't the most riveting subjects in the world to talk about, but how many times are you asked to take a survey every week? I mean, really think about it. Did you call your cell phone provider? Did you call your insurance company? Did you call ASU? Did you call where you get asked to take surveys on, it seems like, a daily basis almost? Because people are going to use that information. They're going to use that information to build a better story and to improve their products and service down the road. But it's really, don't let it fool you. A lot of people giving the surveys and building the surveys think it's to improve the product or service. Partially true. It's to build a better story. If you know how your demographics thinks, the psychographics of the demographics, then guess what? You should be able to build a story that knocks it out of the park. Knocks it out of the park. The gap. If your product or your service is filling a void, that needs to be in the story. It's not necessarily a competitive advantage. It's just something that's not being done. Just something that's not being done. Steve Jobs, I'm not sure if you're aware of this or not, but Steve Jobs took a class at a community college when he was about 17 or 18 years old, and the class was, I think it was like a calligraphy class or something along those lines. And he decided that his operating system was going to have numerous different fonts. And before Steve Jobs, there was just one font. Before Steve Jobs decided that was going to be it. So the next thing you know, Microsoft has fonts. Everybody's got fonts. Numerous fonts. He filled the gap. And it became a point of differentiation. It became a point of what makes his product superior. What gap is it that you are filling? Can you put that into the story? How much time? How much time do you need to tell your story? That's a fair question, and that's the question that you should be asking yourself if you already have it. Aaron, well, how much time do I have is the real question. Not how much time do I need to tell the story. How much time do you have? It's called an elevator pitch, and we're going to talk about it. The time it takes for you to get onto the elevator up to the second floor is sometimes all you have to tell your story to get that potential stranger interested in your product or service, or as even an investor. You don't have the luxury of time. Your story needs to be built in 3 or 4 different ways. You need to have an elevator pitch. You need to have a presentation for customers, and you need to have a presentation for investors. So here we go. Your elevator pitch. Presentation for strangers. People that you get on the elevator with, somebody asks for whatever reason what it is you do, you need to be able to tell them in less than 30 seconds. You need to create a different elevator pitch or the variation of this for your customers. And lastly, you need to create an elevator pitch for your potential investors. Typically, what I have seen is that people just give you an elevator pitch and it's a one-size-fits-all. You know, it's not, you need to have 3 or 4 different elevator pitches for different scenarios. How many times have you been in a situation, and maybe it's not your own company, how many times have you been in a situation where you had to tell somebody what you did for a living or what it was that you were working on? And although you've been working on it for a long time and you could define it easily enough, you stumbled in your presentation. You stumbled in exactly telling them what it was that you did. And then you realized that maybe it was going to take too long. You weren't prepared. You need to have an elevator pitch for different audiences. How many of you, honestly, I would like to know, there's several of us online, how many of you have told somebody what you did and you stumbled through it, and then later on you got home or you're driving and you say, wow, that was really cruddy. I didn't do very good. I've done it. I mean, I'll be honest with you, I've done it. Create the story for the audience now. Who is it that I'm possibly going to run into? How many times have you been on vacation and maybe you run into somebody and you think, wow, this guy, this girl, they'd be great to get to know. They seem like they have a lot of contacts. And you haven't told them what you do or what you're building in a very succinct way, in the form of a myth, metaphor, or image. You know, I mean, and you basically flopped. And you lose them before the story's even over. Yeah, it happens. Unless you know that you're going to have different pitches for different people. Different pitches for different people. Sometimes I'll be flying. I'll be on a plane. And I'll be sitting next to somebody. And typically I'm to myself. I'm one of those individuals that just, you know, I'm on the plane. I want to, you know, veg out, read. I want to think, whatever. I'm not the talkative type. But you'll sit next to somebody that's really interested in what you're doing. You got to be able to tell a good story. You got to be able to tell them what you do. You never know who you're sitting next to. You never know who you're sitting next to. I had a buddy of mine flying around on an Intel plane from here, back and forth from here to San Jose. They have a daily chartered flight, I believe. And one day, he's sitting next to the CEO of Intel. And the CEO, I gather, didn't really have an interest in it. Didn't really have an interest in what he was saying. He never thought to think of a story that he would have to tell about how and what it was that he did at Intel to his superiors that weren't even part of his division. And don't you think for one split second that he would want to have that moment back of sitting on a plane with the CEO? Maybe he could have said something a little more profound. Maybe he could have said something that helped his advancement. Maybe he could have said something and they just would have become friends. The elevator pitch sounds like a buzzword, but I'm here to tell you it's more than a buzzword. Be prepared. Prior preparation prevents poor performance. And as a startup in a tech company, you have no margin for error. And yet, there are going to be lots of errors. You have very little margin for error. If you make your presentations and you check them off, you will be able to deal with those situations that much better. Elevator pitch is not a buzzword. I know it is out there in the, in the world where people don't really resonate or don't really understand what it means, but it's got to mean something to you after this class today. It's got to mean something to you. One last thing, and I'm going to let you go. When we talked about demographics, which is segmentation, this is all about empathy. Not to be confused with sympathy. Empathy is not sympathy. Empathy is putting yourself in someone else's shoes. And when it comes to marketing, that means you put yourself into their shoes so that you can say, you think how they think. If you know how they think, you can build the story. Any questions, comments? Tomorrow, 10 a.m. connect.asu.edu/Chavez. Any questions, comments? Thank you, Robert. Thank you, everybody, for participating today. I'll see you tomorrow at 10 a.m. All right, Dynamite.